So picture this, you want to play a piece on your keyboard that includes bass and piano, and you want to use your left hand for bass and your right hand for the piano parts. But whenever you pull up a software instrument in Logic, the bass takes up the entire range of the keyboard from the lowest note to the highest note, and so does the piano. So how do you get it to split so that you can use the left hand for your bass and your right hand for your piano sounds only? That's called key limit, and we're going to discuss that in this tutorial. But first, this is the Oreo Monster welcoming you back to Logic.band. It's a site full of tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you as a blind Logic, VoiceOver, macOS, and GarageBand user. If you haven't yet, type Logic.band into your web browser, hit return, and when you land on the site, sign up for the mailing list so you can get a free Getting Started with Logic course. So here we are in Logic, and I got a project open that just has
track 1 SoCal Groove,
a drum track. I believe that's a drumming track, and we don't really need to worry about that one for now, but below that I have
track 2 fingerstyle bass,
a bass track,
musical typing, fingerstyle bass, dialogue.
I'll bring up the musical typing keyboard here, and
track 3 Steinway grand piano,
a piano track, right? So what we talked about was wanting to limit the range of the bass to only be on the left side of the keyboard and the range of the piano to only be on the right side of the keyboard. The full range, if you have an 88 key keyboard, for example, of MIDI notes go from C-2 all the way up to G8. So C-2, C-1, C0, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, all the way up to 8. That is the full range of MIDI notes that a 88 key keyboard can play, or any other MIDI keyboard can play if you shift the octaves up and down. That information is useful because that means we need to know what we want to limit this to. Now, if you're new to this, you'll probably just need to do a little bit of trial and error to figure out exactly where you want certain notes to end and where you want certain notes to start, as far as where you want the bass to end and where you want the keyboard to begin. But I'll show you the basic idea of how you can do it and then how you can take advantage of this. So close the musical typing keyboard for now, and let's
track 2 fingerstyle bass,
select the bass track. So we got that selected. So I'm going to stop interacting here with the track headers. VO left,
inspector, groove,
go to inspector. I'm going to interact with the inspector.
in inspector, groove, 7 items, collapsed disclosure triangle,
And I'm going to go over to the track inspector. So I'm going to VO right.
region, MIDI default, collapsed disclosure track, fingerstyle bass, mixer, layout area.
All right, so you see we didn't have a table there. So that means our track inspector is hidden at the moment because it went right from the name to the mixer layout area. So I'm going to VO left.
Fingerstyle bass, track, collapsed disclosure triangle.
That collapse button right next to where it says tracks.
Expanded.
If I VO space on that,
Track. Fingerstyle bass. Table. No selection.
you see it says expanded, and then when I VO right, next to the track name is a table. So we're going to go into this table here.
In table. Channel. MIDI in channel. MIDI out. Freeze mode. Transpose. Velocity. Key limit.
And we're going to VO down to key limit. And if I VO right,
0%. Segment 0 slider. 0. Segment 1 slider.
it says 0% and 1%. Now, this should really say C-2 to G8, and you'll see that it says that when I interact with it. It just doesn't read it right. There's a trick to working with this, even though VoiceOver doesn't exactly read it correctly. Now, when I interact with this, I'm just going to do VO shift space twice quickly to double click on it, and then I can go ahead and type in what I'm looking for as far as the key limit goes. So let's say I want to limit the bass to go from C-2 to C2, and then I'm going to limit the piano to go from C2 to G8. In this case, we're going to double click and type C-2 or C-2 and space, and then C2, and then hit return. So I'm going to interact, double click, and type that in.
In C2 G8, scrubber group content is empty. Tracks, groove.
All right, so we got that typed in, I believe, and we can test this. So bring up the keyboard again,
Musical type.
and you see we don't have anything past C2. But if I go down, you see I can't play any higher notes than that. I'm pressing keys right now. Nothing's happening past that note. We got the bass set. Let's do the same for the piano.
Track 3 Steinway grand.
So the piano, we want to do C2 to G8. So we'll just double click, type in C2 space G8, return, and go from there. So let's go back into the inspector and do that.
Inspector, group, in inspector, region, MIDI, expand, track, Steinway Grand P, table, row 9 of 15. In table, slider, 0%, key limit.
You'll just feel left to the side of the column that has the parameter name. So now that I know I'm on the key limit.
0%, segment 0 slider, 0, segment 1 slider.
I view right to that parameter. So I'm going to interact, double click, and type
in slider. Tracks, group, musical typing, Steinway Grand Piano, dialog.
I'm pressing C2, nothing. Well, if I press, yep, there we go. C sharp 2 plays. C2 does not play. So I can't go down. What I did was C number 2, so C shift and the number 3 for the number sign, and 2 space G8, return. Now, it did take me a couple tries to get that. Sometimes you may have to undo add in a new track or something like that, but it does eventually work if you try it a few times. So now that we got that, here's the other cool thing about this.
Tracks, toolbar, tracks header, track 3 Steinway, track 2 fingerstyle bass, groove.
If we put this in a track stack, so I'm just going to select these 2 tracks. Real command return on
track
this.
2 track 3 Steinway, track 3 Steinway Grand Piano, selected group added to select track 2 sum 4.
And now we have this in a track stack. The cool thing about this is if I play on this track stack,
musical typing,
I can play the bass and the piano at the same time, and they don't cross over into each other's territory anymore. So as I go to the piano, you don't hear any bass. Once you put them in a track stack, you can play on the track stack and they won't interfere with each other. So that's pretty much it. You select the MIDI track or software instrument track that you want to key limit. You will go into the track inspector. That's the second table in the inspector. Look for key limit. And once you're there, via right, interact, and VO shift space twice, and type in the value. Remember, the MIDI range goes from C-2 to G8. If you'd like to type in a sharp, for example, you'd use the number sign. So on the US keyboard, that's shift and the number 3. So for example, you press D, shift, and the number 3 for the number sign or the sharp sign, and then the number, like say 2. So you can type in D sharp 2 that way. And then once you type it in, hit return, and that's it. Rinse and repeat for all the other tracks you want to key limit. Once you got all the key limiting done, remember you can place them in a track stack. And when you play on the track stack, you will trigger the different instruments. So to put them in a track stack, just select all the tracks and then press Command Shift G. And then that way, once you play on a track stack, you'll get one instrument when you say play on the left side of the keyboard and the other instrument when you play on the right side of the keyboard. Very useful, like I said, for playing piano and bass together, or in an orchestral situation where you may want to score a lower part of the orchestra and a higher part of the orchestra at the same time. Thank you for checking out this tutorial. I hope you found that useful and helpful. If you got any tips you'd love to share with the community, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe both to the YouTube channel and to the email list found at logic.band. That way you can get a free Getting Started with Logic course, and I can let you know when the Logic Keyboard Ninja key commands have been updated and keep you in the loop on everything going on at logic.band. Want to go deeper on this topic or anything related to macOS, VoiceOver, Logic, or GarageBand? Then book yourself some one-on-one training by visiting logic.band/training. Want to support us? Then visit logic.band/support, where you can make a one-time or ongoing donation. You can also join the band by visiting logic.band/member, and you'll get bonus tutorials, a Q&A with me, and more. Links to everything, plus a blog post with supplemental information for this tutorial is in the description. And as always, happy recording.